Hello, and welcome back to how to counter aggressive openings in chess. So today we're going to talk about the Scotch Gambit. So it starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and here white plays d4. Now I should note this can happen in multiple move orders, so this could happen after, for example, bishop to c4, knight to f6, and then d4. So we'll see how this transposes after a position like e takes d4. So anyway, after knight to c6, d4, this is the Scotch game. And then once we take on d4, bishop to c4 is the Scotch gambit because they're ignoring this pawn here. So after bishop to c4, we want to make sure we're very careful. We don't want to be passive and let white gain the initiative. So right away, we start with knight to f6. We're developing a piece and we're attacking this pawn on e4. So right away, this looks pretty nice. But what if he just moves this pawn? After this move, black actually has multiple options. But the best one is to play d5. And we saw this in the last video. d5 is a really key move. We're staking our claim in the center and we're fighting back. We're not letting white gain the initiative, attack us. We're the one forcing the issue. So d5 is so important. And after d5, the bishop goes to b5. And if they were to take on f6, right, they were attacking our knight and we just ignored it. So they could very well take on f6. And then after that, we would take their bishop. So we're trading our knight for their bishop. And if they keep taking, we could throw in this check here with queen to e7. And after queen e2, trades, and we take here, after the dust settles, all the trades, black is much better. You see the eval all the way down here because black is not only up a pawn, but is just dominating the position, has complete control of the center with these pawns. The bishops are slicing through the board. We're going to castle, bring the rooks to the e-file. It's just every single one of black's pieces is set up for success. So e takes f6 is definitely nothing to be afraid of. And then e takes d6 is also nothing scary. We're just going to take back with the bishop. And after we take back with the bishop, we're ready to castle. And white pretty much has nothing. We're already much better because we have this extra pawn and white has nothing for it. So if we go back after e5 and then d5, white's best move is to play bishop to b5. So instead of taking, they just kind of keep the tension in the position and pin our knight. They're planning to potentially take back on d4 since this knight is now pinned. So after bishop to b5, I'm going to recommend this fun move, knight to d7. Now, the main move here is to play knight to e4. This is the main line, but knight to d7 is tricky, and it's still very good. Black scores very well. Black wins more than white in this position. So after bishop to b5, I'm going to recommend knight to d7 because this can throw your opponent off, and it's going to give you a really fun position. It's very dynamic, and there's a lot going on. Either side can play for a win. Either side can play for a win. So after knight to d7, a lot of people will take on c6 because they want to try to win this d4 pawn and the knight was protecting it. So after bishop takes c6, this is actually a mistake and we're going to see how we take advantage of that. So first we take back with a pawn. Now after knight takes d4, we're going to actually play knight takes e5. So this knight is not only snacking on a pawn, but it's defending this pawn on c6. And this is a very important pawn. This is not just any pawn. This is white's most powerful pawn in the position, their only pawn in the center. So after we take this, we have complete domination in the center. White has nothing attacking the center. So after knight takes e5, just to show what might happen, white could castle, we could develop our bishop, and they might try to take advantage of the fact that we still haven't castled yet. They give us one more move, we're going to castle, we're going to be fine. But they could be really aggressive here and play f4, trying to kick out our knight and then check us. And we don't really have a great way to defend. If we played a move like bishop to e7, we would be losing because knight takes c6 comes and is very, very dangerous. So here, it's important to note, we could just play king to f8. And king f8 looks a little weird. We're not castling, but this is very, very strong because we have a very strong attack in this position. If white ever plays h3, we can meet that with h5 and sacrifice our knight to open up the h file and attack white's king. This is a very, very rich position with a lot of attacking opportunities. We could open up this diagonal for a bishop. We could play c5, d4. Bringing our queen into the fray with queen to h4 is a nice idea as well. There's a ton of ideas in this position, and it's a really fun position to explore. So if we go back, bishop takes c6 is actually a mistake because we generate this attack. So instead of bishop takes c6, white should play castles. And this is the best line. This is what white should do. And after this, we're going to play bishop to e7. I should note bishop to c5 doesn't make as much sense because although it looks like you're trying to hold on to this pawn, it doesn't really work out. White is going to take on c6. And after we take back, they can actually play this really annoying move, bishop to g5. And it's a very awkward position because we don't want to play f6. And we don't want to move our bishop again. So it's not ideal. So we start with bishop to e7, controlling that g5 square and preparing to castle. So we let white take on c6 and then take on d4. And this time it's a little bit different. This is the reason why this is better for white is because we actually can't, or we can, but it's not as good, take on e5 in this position. Because if we did take on e5, white would attack this knight with bishop to f4. We would have to move it, say knight to g6. And white can actually throw in this move, knight takes c6, grabbing that pawn, and material is even. Our king is still in the center, so white has a very nice position here. So if we go back, knight takes e5 is not as good here, but we still have a good position if we play knight to b8. So this is one move that's really, really weird. We're undeveloping a piece, but if we can remember it, it's going to give us a really nice position. Because after knight to b8, white's going to develop, and we get our king out of the center. So if we kind of take stock of everything that's happened here, we have two bishops because white traded their bishop for our knights, and white only has one bishop. So this generally is a very good advantage in open positions because the bishops are long-range pieces. They can cut through the board. So in this position, if we can open up the position, if we could open up this long diagonal with c5 and d4, then we're going to have a much better position. So this position is roughly equal, but I really, really like this long-term advantage of having the two bishops and just having better central control. This pawn on c6 can become a very strong asset once we move it to c5, controlling the d4 square. And this pawn on d5, again, after we push it to d4, is going to be very, very strong. So our pieces can come alive and we can have complete domination of the center once again with these two c and d pawns. So I really like this position. The two bishops are very, very strong. And this is how you can counter the Scotch Gambit.